Hey everyone, and welcome. We're talking about a homeowner's absolute worst nightmare today. That first pipe, the flooded basement, or that, mysterious stain that just keeps spreading on the ceiling. So today, we are going to dive deep, pun intended, into what really happens when water gets into your home, and more importantly, how you get from that moment of crisis all the way to a full recovery. Let's get right into it.
So let's just start with the most critical question, right? The second you discover water where it shouldn't be, a clock starts ticking. And honestly, what happens in the next 48 hours? That can be the difference between a pretty manageable repair and a catastrophic wallet-draining loss. The pressure is on, for sure. Okay, first things first, let's talk about why this even happens. I mean, yeah, a sudden storm can feel like just a case of terrible luck, but a lot of the time, water damage is actually the result of a few predictable things all coming together to create the perfect storm for a disaster. And what's really interesting is how all these different factors play off each other to just crank up the risk. Think about it. A lot of older homes, maybe built in the 40s or 50s, still have their original plumbing. It's just waiting to give out. Now, you add in some crazy freeze-thaw cycles that are putting stress on those very pipes and even on your foundation. You can see how the threat level just skyrockets. And these dangers really come in two flavors. You've got the really obvious, super dramatic stuff, like a pipe bursting. You can't miss that. But then you've got the silent dangers, the slow, sneaky leaks from a corroding pipe or a tiny crack in the foundation. These things can go totally unnoticed for weeks or even months, causing so much damage behind your walls. So the water's there. What do you do in that exact moment? I mean, that initial chaos, the panic, it's totally understandable. But your actions in this very first hour are absolutely, without a doubt, the most important thing you can do to limit the long-term damage. You've got to move fast, but you've also got to be smart about it. This quote right here really says it all. Speed is everything. I mean everything. Every single minute that water just sits there, it's soaking deeper and deeper into drywall, into your subfloors, your wood framing, and that dramatically increases how big and how expensive this repair is going to be. So the whole key is to switch from panic mode to action mode. In those first few minutes, your mission is to find and shut off the main water valve if you can. Then call for professional help, like right away. After that, if it's safe to do so, start moving furniture and valuables out of the water. Ideally, within an hour, the pros are walking through your door, ready to start extracting water and assessing the damage. All right, so once all that standing water is gone, the real science project begins. And I'm not kidding, drying out a building is a super technical process. You can't just point a couple of household fans at a wet wall and call it a day. It just doesn't work that way. And here's exactly why you have to get it right. You have this tiny window, just 24 to 48 hours, before mold can start to grow in all that damp drywall, insulation, and carpet. And believe me, once mold gets a foothold, you don't just have a water problem anymore. You've got a whole new nightmare on your hands. To fight this, professionals use something called psychrometrics. And no, that's not just some fancy word they throw around. It's the actual science of controlling the environment, juggling the temperature, the humidity, and the airflow to literally pull moisture out of building materials as fast and as efficiently as humanly possible. And this is so important to remember. Not all water is created equal. The source of the flood dictates the entire cleanup strategy. Category 1, that's clean water, say from a supply line. No big deal. But Category 3, or black water, from a sewer backup or a river flood, that is grossly contaminated and requires really strict safety protocols and means pretty much anything it touches has to be thrown out. So how do the pros know when something is really dry? Well, they use special moisture meters to hit very specific targets. See, a wall might feel dry to you, but the wood framing inside could still be totally saturated. So before any rebuilding can even start, that wood has to be below 15% moisture, and the drywall has to be below 12%. These aren't just guesses, they're hard science. And look, this whole scientific process, it takes time. Rushing it is probably the single biggest mistake you can make. With all the industrial-grade dehumidifiers and high-speed air movers, you should expect the structural drying phase to last about 3 to 5 days, and they'll be monitoring it daily to make sure it's working. Okay, so once the entire structure is verifiably scientifically dry, the focus finally shifts. We move from stopping the damage to actually rebuilding and putting your home back together again. It's really helpful to think of this in two separate phases. First, you have mitigation. That's the emergency response, getting the water out, drying everything, and basically stopping the bleeding. Then comes restoration. That's the actual reconstruction, replacing drywall, putting in new floors, new cabinets, basically making it look like it never even happened.
And yeah, navigating all this usually means dealing with an insurance claim, which is why documentation is everything. Literally, the second you find the water, start snapping pictures. Your restoration company is going to provide super detailed reports with all those moisture readings that prove how bad the damage is. That's exactly what your insurance adjuster needs to see to approve the claim without a bunch of frustrating delays.
So if you want to boil it all down, the entire professional process really comes down to these three steps. Step 1, that emergency extraction to get the bulk of the water out. Step 2, the scientific drying and constant monitoring. And Step 3, the final reconstruction and restoration to get your home back to normal. Now that we get the whole recovery process, let's talk about the most powerful tool you have in your arsenal: prevention. Just knowing what to look for can help you stop a total disaster before it even has a chance to start.
You know, your house will often give you little clues. That musty smell in the basement that just won't go away? Yeah, don't ignore that. Peeling paint, swollen baseboards, a little water stain on the ceiling? These are all red flags that you've got a hidden leak somewhere. Catching these things early can save you from a massive headache down the road.
And that really brings us to our final thought here. Getting through a major water damage event is a huge relief, but it's also a pretty powerful lesson. It kind of forces you to ask, okay, what vulnerabilities did this expose? And what can I do now to make sure my home is stronger and more resilient for the future? By staying vigilant and acting fast, you really can protect your biggest investment. Thanks so much for joining me.